All right, today's episode and guest is a long time coming. I think the two of us we've known this was going to happen for a while. I don't know what took us so long. It was definitely my fault, but I'm so excited to welcome Mackinzie Rummell to the podcast. Mackinzie is a relationship therapist based in California. She works with couples and individuals to reach their full potential in life. And she has an amazing personal story as well that I am so excited to share with you guys, just to kind of inspire and empower you all to do what works for you in your life. So, welcome, Mackinzie, to Seeing Other People.
Thank you so much for having me. Honestly, I'm like fangirling a little bit. I can't even believe that I'm here because I've listened to your podcast for so long and I followed you for so long. And yeah, we've always been like Instagram friends, but we have never like, oh, let's do the podcast. Like,
Well, you
so
emailed me and I'm like, I obviously know who you are. Like, what do you mean? Also, I'm laughing that you're like, I'm fangirling because the last 5 minutes before we hit record have been so chaotic and I am a disaster, but this is me.
you
So
know
you're
what?
getting the real
This is
me.
us. It's
Yes.
okay.
So, okay, you are on Instagram as Beachy Therapist. I love your content. Everyone needs to go follow you right now, Beachy Therapist. What led you to be a therapist and specifically to work with couples?
Yeah. So I feel like those two questions are actually so different for me because when I was in college, which I'm sure I'll get into my relationship and whatnot, my past relationship, I was going through it with him and I went to like my university's like school counseling center essentially. Like I had never done therapy. Um
Were you
and
just like
I
in that moment, like, I need help?
Oh yeah, like
Okay.
some bad stuff was
Yeah.
going down, which I'm not gonna like completely go into, but let's just say some major trust is broken. I'm 19, I'm freaking out. I thought I was in love with this guy. I'm like panic mode. So I go to this counseling center and I'm like, I need to see a therapist immediately. And they're like, okay, is this an emergency? Like, are you gonna hurt yourself? And I was like, no. Like, what do you mean? And they're like, well, we can get you in like next week. And I was like, I don't think I can wait till next week. Like, are you kidding me?
Right, like, there's an in
So
between. It's like, I don't need to call 911, but I
yeah.
also can't wait.
Yes. So they were very gracious and they did get me in pretty quick. And that's when I started my therapy journey. Obviously, it was a little chaotic and a little more like crisis moment therapy, but it did turn into something really beautiful, like longer term for me. So that's where it started. And I was already majoring in behavioral sciences, which I know
Hmm,
is like a weird random, it's like not psychology, but my undergrad was behavioral sciences, sociology, and then my minor was psychology. So I wasn't
okay.
even like, when I changed my major, I wasn't like, I'm going to be a therapist. I just was really interested in sociology. And I found it to be the most interesting topic that you could possibly study at a university. So I was like, well, paying all this money, I might as well study something that's interesting. And yeah, it just led me on this track of I stayed with that therapist until I graduated college. So I had her for like a couple years, which was awesome. It was low cost. And yeah, I really just took off from there. And then my journey with wanting to do couples really stemmed from my experience in couples therapy with my husband and before. So we did premarital and then into marital and just our struggle and like we're two people that can access therapy. We live in a nice area. Like, we're very privileged and we struggled that much. Like,
Mhm.
I can only imagine people that maybe grew up with worse childhoods than us or more trauma or different trauma, however you want to describe it. And I was just like, I have a heart for this. I can't let other people experience what we experienced and not be able to get through it. Like, I
Yeah.
really am like, there are tools, there are skills. It is so, I don't want to say it's easy, but it is learnable. It is teachable, and there are concrete things that you can do to save your marriage or save your relationship or just learn how to communicate better, even if that's not your person. So I think, yeah, I just really started to have a heart for it once I kind of went through the weeds myself.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting to hear that it was a difficult process for you to get into it with your background and your expertise and knowing what you know.
Hmm.
So that just amplifies how challenging it might be for people who maybe they've never worked with a therapist before. Maybe the idea
Hmm.
of going to a therapist is still taboo in their communities. Maybe they can't afford it. They don't know how to access it. They have healthcare challenges. Like, there's so many complex issues that it's really interesting to hear that, like, you had a difficult time
Right.
navigating it. But
Right.
I think it's amazing that you're like, let me do what I can now to help other people.
Exactly, which is also kind of what started Beachy Therapist, is like I at first I was just throwing spaghetti at the wall, and then my my relationship stuff started kind of popping off, and I was like, "Oh, maybe I should be posting more about that." Like it sounds like people want that content. And yeah, I was like, might as well give free whatever I can. Obviously, it's not therapy on Instagram, but it's skills,
Guidance.
it's tools, it's yeah, exactly, it's guidance. And I was like, if I could do that and give that to people for free, like I am happy to do that.
Absolutely. And I love, like, just a side anecdote about you, like, beachy therapist. I feel like it just resembles you, like your personality, your like aura, like beachy. It's just like
Yeah.
positive and bright and glowy. Like it gives off you. So I love
Oh,
that.
thank
That's what
you.
you go by.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. So, okay. Before we get into the communication and boundaries and all the therapy of it
All the things,
all
yeah.
the things, I want to hear your story because you're married.
Yes.
Before you were married, you were engaged. And before you were
Yes.
engaged, you were engaged before.
No, I was only engaged once.
Oh,
Well, I mean, I was engaged to my husband and then we got married, but then I was engaged once before,
right,
if that makes
right, right,
sense.
right. Exactly. Before
Okay.
you were engaged
Oh,
to your
why was I
husband.
confused about
No, no.
that? I don't know.
Before you were, sorry. No, okay. You were engaged to your husband.
Yes.
Prior to that, you had broken off an engagement.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
correct. Sorry, I was like,
Cool. We're on the same page.
We're all on
Great.
the same page.
Words are
Yes.
hard.
It's okay. You know, we're both on the struggle bus today.
Yes, we are. Okay. I would love to hear that story. And it's so interesting because I've been having more and more conversations with people who have been engaged and either they broke it off or their ex
Yes.
fiance broke it off. And it's, it should be normalized because it's a normal thing that happens. But until recently, I heard so few stories about it. And so I
Mhm.
love hearing that, like, hey, this thing happens, because the last thing I would ever want is for someone to be like, well, I said yes, I committed to this, so I can't get out of
So
this.
I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
I just listened to the episode with I think she's also a therapist. It
Rebecca,
was like a couple
yeah.
weeks ago. Yeah. I was like, "Ooh, yes, her and I are the same."
And I got
Uh-huh.
a DM yesterday from somebody who wants to talk about their experience. Like, it really
Wow.
is more common than we think. We don't often hear about it because up until now, it seems like people were afraid to share that story of them.
Yeah. Or it's like, and I remember listening to your episode with Rebecca, like for me, I related to her so much with it was embarrassing. I didn't want to talk
Mhm.
about it. I never thought in a million years that I would be on a podcast talking about the most embarrassing thing that I thought at the time was
Yeah.
happening to me or that was occurring in my life. I was like, I'm never going to talk about this. I just want to be done with it. This is embarrassing. This is hard. But now looking back, I would say that wasn't even the hardest thing that I've ever
Yeah,
done in my life.
I'm
So
sure. And
hindsight is 2020.
I have two friends. One is about to move in with her partner, and the other is about to have a baby with hers, where when they
Hmm.
first met, they learned that the men had been engaged before, and it
Yeah.
really scared them. And
Oh,
they
okay.
didn't know like what that meant or how to proceed because they hadn't known anybody else who had been through that. And
Hmm.
so I love hearing these stories and normalizing it. So I appreciate you being open to sharing.
Yeah, totally. I find it before I get into it, I find it a strength, to be honest. Like, I would say it's even like a superpower for like those men to have been through that and said, no, I'm consciously not choosing the wrong person for me. I'm so dedicated and so intentional about finding my person that I'm going to do this really hard thing to make sure I find her. Like,
Yeah.
that's even it's just so it can be so beautiful. I know in the moment if anybody is going through that, it's so hard. um but yeah, I so kind of back to when I started to go to therapy was the same guy that I was having a little bit of a crisis over. Let's just say trust was broken very early on in the relationship, and I was definitely anxiously attached. For anybody who doesn't know what that is, attachment theory is just basically the theory that we form our attachments with our romantic partners, with friends, with other people based on our relationship with our parents. So even though I was very securely attached with my mom, I think I kind of had this underlying anxious attachment because my parents did divorce when I was really young. Um, and so I didn't really see a marriage play out. I didn't really see a relationship play out in the house. I was very lucky that my mom kind of was mom and dad for me. And then my dad is in my life too, and we do have a great relationship. So all good there. But I definitely had this underlying kind of like, I can't leave. I don't want to leave him. I feel bad. I don't want him to feel like his flaws or his, misjudgments are being, you know, like it's something that we can't work through. Like I thought, oh, I can work through this and it'll make us stronger. Similar to Rebecca. She like said the exact
Mhm.
same thing that I'm saying right now. It's like you have this mindset of I do care about this person and I want to make it work and I don't want to make them feel bad for maybe a mistake that they've made. Maybe I make a mistake in the future and I don't want them to treat me like this and just leave me. So you kind of don't leave right away, or at least I didn't at 19, 20.
You were also
Um,
so young.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know what I was doing. Yeah, did not know what I was doing. I had one previous serious boyfriend before that, which was my high school boyfriend. And that relationship was actually really healthy and really great. And I actually did have a really good first experience with relationships, which I think it was kind of jarring to then have this like intense, like traumatic experience almost happen with my ex. So I stayed with him for a while. I graduated college and we ended up getting engaged right after I graduated, kind of like I can't even remember. It's so funny. It's like I'm trying to even remember the date and I can't even remember because that's how it feels so removed. Because at this point it's 6, 7 years ago. Um, and we had only talked about getting engaged maybe once or twice. Like we did not have deep conversations about it. We did not have serious conversations about it. Um, he definitely had some mental health struggles, some identity issues that were pretty deep that weren't worked through. And when I say not worked through, I mean barely acknowledged, definitely not going to therapy, definitely engaging in substances and things that wouldn't help, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
without releasing too much information. And um, everybody has their things and we all come from a childhood that maybe shapes us a certain way. So again, I wasn't going to judge it. I just was like, didn't know what to do. So we got engaged. And I remember when it happened, I was like, A, what the heck is going on? Because we barely talked about this. Talked about it like twice in more of a fantasy way. Like, that would be so fun. Like, we should do that. Like, let's get really strong. At least in my mind, I thought that was communicated. Let's get really strong in our relationship so we can do that.
Yeah.
And instead, I feel like it gave him the green flag to like do it.
And he proposed.
He
Like
proposed.
what's funny? It's like we never
Hmm.
hear about people actually being surprised when their partner
Oh,
proposes. Like you were not expecting him to propose.
no, I was not. No, I was not. And he also did it in front of people.
Oh
So
my
I couldn't
god.
really, in the moment, I definitely wanted to say no, or say,
Wow.
let's talk about this. Not like, no, let's break up. It was more like, we're not ready. Like, what are you doing? Like, we're 22. I'm 22. He was 23. Like, it was just like, not the time. Um,
Do you think any part of him was like, I know things are rocky, but I don't want this to end, so I'm going to do this to lock us in?
yes. Yes.
Woof.
Unfortunately. Yeah. Unfortunately. And again, no ill will against him because I've definitely forgiven and moved on, obviously, but there was definitely some manipulation there. And again, I don't know if it was deeply conscious or subconscious, whatever that was for him, but yeah, it was definitely an anxious, like, I got to keep her or we're not going to
Mhm.
make it kind of thing. And doing it in front of other people too, it was kind of like we're not even alone. Like,
Oh my
we
god.
can't even have,
I'm
yeah, it's like
stressed
cringe.
thinking about you in that moment being like, "Ah, okay."
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I remember calling my mom after, like, to tell her, and I'm crying. And she was like,
Oh.
and it looked like happy tears, but really I was like so scared and like so nervous. And I started crying and she started crying and she was like, "Are you engaged?" And I was like, "Yeah." And she was like, "Congrats." We did the whole congrats thing and put her on speaker. We went through the motions of it, right? And by this time, I started to have some pretty intense physical anxiety symptoms that at the time seemed like heart problems. So
Oh
I
my
kid you not,
God.
I was I was 22, 23. No, I was 22 when this was happening. Um I went to a cardiologist. I was on high blood pressure medication at
Wow.
22, completely healthy, in shape, like going to the gym. Um and I was literally, I had my Apple Watch, and it was like the first gen of it. And I remember I would just be doing laundry and my heart rate would spike to like 190. Like they were like concerned about my body. Like it was, my body was telling me to get the F out like so quickly. And I wasn't listening. I wasn't listening. I was engaged for like a year and a half. And then I finally, after a lot of therapy and a lot of conversations, with finally I started to open up to friends about it, because it
Mhm.
was really hard to say. We didn't plan anything. I didn't try on a dress. I didn't do anything. We kept saying, oh, we can't afford a wedding right now. And so we were going to have a long engagement. That was like the excuse.
Before
Um,
you started opening up to your friends, like, did they know where you stood or how you felt? Or did
hmm,
they think like, "Oh, yeah, like, Mackenzie's engaged, like, yay."
I think when it first happened, it definitely was like, Mackenzie's engaged, yay. And then I think as time went on, and as I talked to them afterwards, they were like, we kind of knew something was up. Like, you weren't yourself. And like, obviously, you were having like the health problems. Like, that was weird. But again, they were so young too. So it's like we all were just
Right.
young babies, like just graduated college, like not knowing, we're all having tumultuous boyfriends and weird things happening. And so it wasn't like super obvious, but my mom definitely knew the whole time. And I
Wow.
remember talking to her afterwards, and I asked her, because she was always so supportive, and she was always like, whatever you want to do, go for it. But she knew in her heart that it wasn't right for me. And she just wasn't going to cross that boundary and like actually say it unless I started to really plan and set dates and try on dresses. She said then she was going to have a talk with me, if that makes sense. So she
Do
was trying to
you
let me figure
Yeah.
it out.
Do you wish she had said something sooner, or do you feel like you needed to come to this conclusion on your own?
I mean, looking back, the timing of it is so serendipitous to meeting my husband now. So I'm afraid that if I did leave him sooner or did have that kind of direction,
Mhm.
things might have not worked out the way they are now.
Yeah.
And I don't want to think of a world that that happened. So no. And I think it's also just a testament to how understanding my mom is, and how just natural her boundaries are, of like, I'm not going to tell her what to do, but like if she was going to start doing planning and stuff, then I would maybe have a conversation. Like I
Yeah.
do appreciate the way she kind of even went about talking to me about that. So no, because I definitely needed to figure it out on my own. Now I do wish I was seeing a therapist, another, like a new one after my university therapist. And when I started therapy, it was like my first session. I sat down and I was like, so I'm engaged and I don't want to be. And she was like, oh,
Oh my
okay.
god.
Yeah, that was literally my first session. It was like right after we got engaged.
Was
And I
that the
was like,
first time you said it out loud?
yes. Yeah. And I definitely every week was super open with her. So I have
Wow.
this outlet every week where I'm talking about it, working through it, so conflicted. And I think I did wish that my therapist was like maybe a little bit more straightforward with me. Everybody has their own therapy techniques. And obviously, us as therapists, we can't just give advice. We can't say, do this. Like, that is so, like, not allowed.
Right.
Um, but I do wish that she was more pointed with her, like, hey, it's been a year and you've been saying the same thing. What's
Mhm.
going to change? What do you want? Let's actually figure this out. Like, you're paying me for a reason. Like, and I get to that point with some of my clients. If they want straightforward, I will give them straightforward. If they want gentle and they need time and they need to grieve something, that is so different. But I was just in this constant conflict with myself of not, it was like when you know, which I know you
Mhm.
probably know the feeling. I know the feeling now too. But when you don't know, you also know, if that makes
Yes.
sense.
Yes.
So,
And you could know, but not be ready. You
mhm,
could know, but not know how to. You could know, but be terrified to.
yes.
Yeah.
But when you don't know, it's kind of an
Mhm.
indication of like, well, It's probably not a good sign. Yeah.
So you figured it out.
Figured it out.
You knew. You
Mhm.
left.
Mhm.
What happens next?
So I start living my best life, right? I find
Yeah.
roommates. I find this really cute house to live in with some friends. And I start actually diving into the things that I want to do. Which part of that was we, that ex, we definitely had a difference in like spiritual stuff. So I'm Christian and I wanted that for my marriage. I wanted that in my person. And so I started going to church with my friends. And I had been going also when we were still together because I definitely needed that kind of spiritual support. And yeah, I was going to a young adults, like, it was like Saturday nights or Sunday nights. I can't even remember. And I kept seeing this guy there. And I always had my eye on him, but I was like in no place where I was like, I'm gonna start dating again. Like,
Mhm.
I was having fun. I was going out with my friends. I was again living my best life. I was shopping a ton because I was like, well, I have all this money that I don't have to like worry. You know
On
what
a
I mean? Like,
wedding.
yeah, no, yeah, exactly. So I was shopping. I feel like I still have Lululemon. I bought like so much Lululemon during that time because I had so much extra money.
I mean, that's gonna last
And
forever.
like,
I'm in my first pair of Align leggings right now that I probably
yeah,
bought like 6 years ago, and
yeah,
they're amazing. I
yeah,
support.
they stay forever. That's what I'm
Maybe
saying.
too
I'm
after
like,
a breakup.
yeah, you shop a little. So again, I was living my best life. I was going to church on this, young adults thing, and I always saw this guy, and it was like, for me, it was like he was always like the hottest guy in the room. Like I was like, oh, he's the cute boy at church, essentially. And I just felt like a little girl again, like with a little crush. So I was, I saw him around, and a few months pass, and then we had I think it was like Valentine's Day. There was like some big event that we had, and I saw him there again. I kind of continued to have my eye on him. And then there was this night where it was like we all took turns as groups to like serve the food that was there. We like always ate dinner together, and so he was serving the food, and I remember him serving me like a taquito, and me just being like so nervous, like going up to him. And I didn't even introduce myself. That's how nervous I just was, like, hi. And then he gave me my taquito, and I just walked away, and that was it. So we had barely interacted. And then in March of 2020, if you do not recall,
What a
this is
time.
when
Wait,
this
what
is when
happened in
the
March of 2020?
yeah. So this was pre shutdown. It was 2 weekends before shutdown. And we went on it was like, the young adults group went to Big Bear, which is this
Love.
mountainous area in Southern California. And it was a retreat. It was like a young adults retreat where there was like worship, and you can go hike and you can go snowboard and yada, yada, yada. So I drive up there with one of my best friends, and we get there, and the pastor who was like heading it all, he's like younger too. He's like probably like mid 30s. And he's like, hey, everybody. And he was like, I want you to meet somebody you've never met before. I don't want you guys to hang out with your friends this weekend. I want you to make friends. I want you to hang out with somebody new, meet somebody new, go. And so me and my husband just looked at I at the time he was obviously not my husband, but we just looked at each other in the room, and it was like an instant, like he just looked at me, I just looked at him. That was very weird that happened. And so we just walked towards each other, and we did the little icebreaker, which was like rock paper scissors. It was so silly. And we chatted, and we chatted that night. And then the following day was Saturday. I went snowboarding all day, he hiked, we did different things. And then later that night on Saturday, we did like cosmic bowling. So it was like later at night. And I purposefully was like, I don't want to bowl because I wanted to make sure that I could go near his lane to like talk to
Love.
him. So I was like, I'm good. I don't need a bowl. Like, I'm tired or whatever I said. And so I go over to his lane to like watch him bowl. And he ended up literally not bowling. Other people bowled for him. Him and I talked all night long. We shared Spotify playlists. We shared photos of our family. Like, it was crazy. He was like, this is my niece. And I was like, I have nieces and nephews too. And there was just so much that we had. Like, there was so much connection right off the bat. And Sunday, we drive home. It was like the end of that experience that weekend, and I didn't get his number. I didn't really, and I saw that he had followed me on Instagram, so obviously I followed him back.
He was
And
definitely
then
thinking, "Oh god, I didn't get her number. Like, how did I mess
yeah.
this up? What do I do? Is it weird to follow her? Is it
Yeah.
not?"
Yeah, totally. And so on Monday, it's funny the way he tells it is on Monday, he had his therapy because he has been in
Love.
therapy,
Amazing.
which is probably the most attractive thing a man can do
Green
these
flag.
days. Yes, green, big, ginormous green flag. So I was already like, like, okay. So on Monday, he had therapy and he said he was talking to his therapist about it. And he was like, I'm so bummed I didn't get this girl's number. I followed her on Instagram. And his therapist, like, why don't you message her on Instagram? Like, just do that. And he
Right,
was
like,
like,
why do
no,
we
that's weird.
overcomplicate it so much? Like, just
Yeah, just
send the
message her.
message.
Yeah.
Crazy.
And he was like, no, is that weird? Like, I don't want her to think that. I'm like, and he was like, no, dude, that's what you guys do these days. Like, that's how you date. That's how you like talk to people. And he was like, okay. So Monday, I'm driving home from work and I'm on the phone with my mom, like on Bluetooth, and I'm driving. And I'm like, there was this really cute guy, and we started talking, and he doesn't get my number, but he followed me on Instagram. And as I'm saying this, my phone goes bloop, and he DMs
No.
me.
Oh
Yep.
my
And I was
god.
like, Mom, he just DM'd me. Like, he just, and she's like, DM. I'm like, he messaged me. And she was like, wait, you said he didn't have your number. I'm like, but he has my Instagram. I was like trying to explain it to her.
So funny.
And so it's this chaotic drive. And she's like, pull over and read it. And I was like, I can't. I'm on the freeway. Like, so I'm getting as fast as I can to my house so that I can look at this message because I did not want to die on the California freeways. If anybody understands what
Mhm.
that's like, you can't be
Nope.
on your no, it's just not a good idea.
There's no spot to pull over in. Like,
No,
you
no.
actually can't. There's 7 lanes.
And there's
What
5,000 people on the road
Yeah.
and it's
Yep.
like ridiculous. So I finally park and he just messaged me and was like so intentional and straightforward. And he just said, hey, I loved getting to know you this weekend. I would love to take you out to coffee. Like it was just like a man. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like just so different.
Straightforward.
Yes. And I could just see the maturity and the kind of again intention of like I want to date. Like I'm not just like, hey girl, how are you? Like no. It's like it was like a very intentional like I'm reaching out to take you to coffee. I would like to get to know you more. I had a really good time this weekend essentially. So of course I was like, yes, absolutely. Love to do it. Like I'm free Thursday. So by Thursday, we had our first date, which we both had work, so I don't know why we were thinking coffee. So it ended up being dinner. Um we shut the restaurant down, literally couldn't stop talking. I told him about my previous engagement off the bat, and
Wow.
he told me about some of his stuff too. And I
And
was
that
really
was probably the
honest.
first time you had told somebody new about it.
Mhm. Yeah, I really had not. I had gone on a couple dates, whatever you want to call that, just
Mhm.
here and there, more casual, not like, oh, I really like this guy and I intend to pursue.
Yeah.
It was more like, oh, I met this fun guy at the bar and like we're gonna blah 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 have dinner or whatever. It's like,
How
not
how
much.
did you articulate it to him? Like, how did this conversation come up?
Honestly, he made me feel so comfortable, and we were just again so connected right off the bat that it didn't even feel hard, if that makes sense. It felt so natural, and the way that he was asking me questions and just that we were both being vulnerable on the same level, it didn't feel like a trauma dump. It didn't feel like oversharing. I didn't go home and go, "Oh my gosh, why did I tell him that?" Like it felt very normal. I think also being in the space of like, we both go to the same church and, spirituality is very vulnerable in general, especially if you're sharing about what you need prayer for or things like that. It was kind of natural anyway to just
Mhm.
be like, this is part of my story and like I'm a flawed human just like you and like this is something that happened and this is what I learned from it. Like I refuse to settle and like I don't want to have a marriage that is not happy or not going to last because my parents divorced and I'm pretty dead set on that not being my story. So I would like to have a life and a marriage that is successful and has longevity and all of that good stuff. So it was very easy. It was honestly, it just came really naturally. And I'm really thankful for that because obviously it set us on a good track to just being open and vulnerable in our conversations to follow. And I think
Yeah.
that really helped our dating experience for sure.
Definitely. When you can lead with that vulnerability and establish
Hmm.
that foundation from the start, it absolutely makes the rest so much easier. In that moment, I'm curious what his response was. just for, anyone who ends up on a date with somebody who is opening up about something like this before, like, what was his response? What would an ideal response be for you to hear to feel supported in sharing this information with somebody?
Yeah. I mean, if you're first meeting someone and you're on a first date or a second date or even a third date, and you're sharing something vulnerable, whether that's a breakup or a broken engagement, and that person reacts with empathy and compassion and kindness and honestly just open mindedness, curiosity, those are all really good things. And he definitely did all of those things. I would say if anybody is super reactionary or has a lot of feelings about it and they don't even know you that well, that's probably not the healthiest response. No judgment, but sounds like they have some things to work through if they're getting that worked up about something that is not even have anything to do with them.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, he was just very understanding and he did have as we started dating seriously, he did have a lot of questions. And there was a moment I think before we got engaged or while we were engaged where he was like, I am a little nervous. Like you've broken off an engagement once and like it does like the vulnerable in me is like I'm scared you would do that to me and there was just a lot of reassurance given and a lot of we're so different and this is so special to me and you are so special to me and there is that's I did that so I could be here with you. Like
Mhm.
that is why this is working so well because I did that. And I'm not um I'm not going to settle for less than what I wanted and you're that. And I think that kind of just I don't even think it was much of a conversation after that. I think he just shared that with me and I, eased his mind and reassured him and I think that was that and obviously we got married. So, yeah,
It worked out, yeah,
it
and
did.
I applaud him for opening up to you about that, and who knows how long he was feeling that for before he opened up about it,
Mhm.
but the worst thing you can do is let that boil up inside and then start to assume and overanalyze situations, and I think that's one thing that happens when, like, we vent to our friends about our
Mhm.
relationships and not our partner.
Yep.
And then we get other people's ideas and experiences in our head versus just going to the source and talking to the person that we're with about what is happening in the relationship that we're in with them.
Totally. Totally. And I think when we're younger and we're in college or just even young adulthood, you're spending majority of time with your friends, right? You're in the
Mhm.
dorms or you're with roommates and you're just constantly with girls and it's like girl time and so it's natural to share a lot. And I think where the maturity comes is when you start to learn boundaries of like, I don't need to tell them everything. I don't need to tell them every fight that we had or disagreement or can you believe he did this? It's like, yeah, maybe if something serious happens and you actually need advice or you actually need somebody to hold you in that. But to have that constant communication about all the things in your relationship, it's really not respecting what you're trying to build if you're actually trying to build something with your partner because there should be some things that we me and my husband we call it that we keep sacred like we
Yeah.
don't share everything because it's us it's our thing we're working through it and if we really do need help we both of us have established people that we do talk about that we go to for advice um, and we always say it needs to be somebody who's also married for us and who is maybe in a different life stage a little bit above us if that makes sense so for him it's like his brother married for I think almost 10 years now has two kids like he's able to give a little bit of solid advice if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's a really great method and just something whether it relates to dating or just life in general, that's something that everyone should be doing is getting advice from people who are in that stage or that next stage that they admire, like in a
That you
relationship
respect,
that they admire,
yeah.
they respect, that you would look up to. Like, it's so interesting, like, we sometimes will take advice from people who or let me rephrase that, like, I love the saying, like, don't take criticism from someone you wouldn't take advice from. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, don't take advice from someone whose situation you wouldn't want.
Yeah, totally.
And I like the idea of keeping it in line, like keeping it like who the person you're gonna talk to about it. They know what's been going on, but you're
Mhm.
not just like going around and gossiping about yourself to a million different people. I think that's mature, respectful to you, to your partner, to your relationship, and it probably leads to just healthier communication and boundaries all around.
Mhm. And it forces us to talk about it, right? So like what you're
Yeah,
saying is like, why are we not going to our partner about the things that we're upset about? Why are we talking about it with our friend at coffee in the morning?
right.
Like tell him what you're upset about, or have a conversation about, "Hey, I think I need this to change," or I'm unhappy with this. Can we talk about why this is happening?" Those are really important conversations to have. And if you are planning on being married for a long time or married for 40, 50 years, you best believe you got to get really good at those conversations, because life is not easy breezy, beautiful cover girl at every moment. It is hard.
Absolutely.
It is hard.
Absolutely.
And I know you and I are kind of still in the honeymoon new phase of marriage, so I'm sure there's listeners that are like, you have no idea.
And we don't.
Um
We only know
yeah,
what we know,
we only know what we have. Yeah.
and all we can do is set ourselves up for success down the line
Mhm.
and give
Mhm.
ourselves the best tools in our toolbox and the best like baby steps practice along the way at communication, at conflict resolution, at having these hard conversations.
Mhm. Absolutely.
So, okay, you mentioned we know you got married.
Yes.
We also know that you guys met right before the world shut down.
Yes.
How did we get from one to the next?
Quickly. That's how we got from one to the next. So we dated, I think we had 3 dates before the COVID shutdown, and then I believe he called me after work one day, the Friday that it all happened.
Love that he
It's
called.
like yes, exactly. Yeah, and we had already kind of been doing that. It was like I don't know, it's so funny because 'cause I'll have clients that are younger that are like, "He didn't text me back," or, "He Snapchats me, but he doesn't text me." It's like all this, like, back and forth, and I'm like, I don't even know what to say because I did not experience that, and I never did an app, so I don't even know. I try my best to navigate that with people, but yeah, he called me on that Friday and was like, "Hey, did you see the news?" I was like, "Yep. Did you see the news?" And he was like, "Yeah.
Mhm.
What should we do? Because apparently we're gonna die if we see each other." And I was like, "Yeah, that's what they're saying." And he was like, um, I can check in with my roommates and see if they're cool with you still coming over. Like, would you like to do the same?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Because I really like you and I want to continue to see you." And I was like, "I really like you and I think it's worth it. And if we die, then we die." And he was like, "Let's do it." So we both asked our roommates if it was cool if the other came over, and it was like, yeah, just like go in your room, or like I had a really nice backyard, and he did too. Mine was a little nicer, but had like a fire pit and like a grassy area, so he would come over and we would honestly like play card games in the backyard. We would like grab food, or I would cook food and we would eat it outside, or we would just hang out in my room, like whatever that looked like. And our roommates were cool with it, so we just continued dating. And our first kiss, I don't know if he's going to be upset that I said this. He probably won't. He asked me permission because it was literally like the week after shutdown. So he was
Yeah.
like, "I normally wouldn't do this, but do you feel comfortable if I kiss you right now?" And I was like, "Yes, I do." So
That's so
we,
sweet and thoughtful, and
yeah,
again, shows the maturity and
yes,
intentionality.
yes, yeah. So we had our first kiss at my door, like he was saying goodbye. And I remember I shut the door and it literally felt like a movie. I like jumped up and down and was like like silent screaming. Do you know what I mean? Because it was like a little bit
Yeah.
late at night, but I was like, "Ah," like
Yeah.
like jumping up and
I feel
down,
it.
like freaking out. I was like, "I can't believe he kissed me. Like, who can I call? It's 11:30 at night. Like, I can't talk to anybody about this right now."
But I need
But
to.
I was just like, and same with him. He said he went in his car and like blasted his music and was like, "Yeah," like so excited. So we were just on the same page from the beginning. And I know that's not everybody's story, but it can happen because it happened to me and I was not even expecting it. So,
Yeah, and I'd say 9 out of 10 of the relationships that I've heard working out, the one thing that is the same is that it was easy in the beginning.
hmm, yeah,
There was communication. One person knew where the other stood. Nobody was playing games or trying to play it cool. Like it was
totally.
straightforward and easy. And when it's hard, it makes us want to make it work so much more. And we fight for it and we
Hmm.
compromise our values and
Hmm.
we allow ourselves to become a different version of us and we
Yeah.
like, but it shouldn't be hard.
Yeah. And there actually is research that shows the honeymoon phase is there for a reason. So I think people get really freaked out when it's like, "Oh, we're not in the honeymoon phase anymore." It's like, okay, but did you have one? It's like, yeah, it lasted 2 years or it lasted 6 months or a year, whatever it is. And it's like, great, you needed that because that is the foundation of love and adoration that you need. If you do want to get married and you want to be married for, again, 45 years, you got to pull from that. You got to pull from how did we feel when we were first together when it was easy and there were no conflicts and it
Yeah.
was all this. I mean, honestly, it's like a drug. It's like happy hormones are pumping through your veins. That is there for, again, for a reason. Your brain makes those connections with that person. And it makes for a really good rest of your relationship even if you do start to have conflict or you do start to have hard things happen. It's like, yeah, of course, life happens, the world shuts down, you lose a parent, you have a miscarriage, you it's like, gosh, like if you're going to pick somebody to go through those things with, you got to have that foundation of like, we can do this and we love each
Mhm.
other so much and we're in it and we know what that feels like, and so we're going to always strive for that. And I find it's so interesting because again, the honeymoon phase, it like seems like this bad thing that to end, but it's really not bad that it ends. It just means you're in your next stage of your relationship.
Yeah, and that hopefully there are things that you did in that phase that you could pull from. Like for you, maybe
Mhm.
you guys still love like playing cards and games like
Yes.
in what your now shared backyard or in your
Yes,
home.
totally.
Like for me and Jake, we started doing our like date card days in our first 10 dates and we still do them. Like we're both planning one for each other around the holidays. Like it's
Mm,
those little things that you can go back to that will like ground you and your relationship and bring you back to like what led you to this place.
yes. Yeah, creating habits and rituals for sure, and
Yeah.
traditions. Like we're coming up on the holidays, it's like what are some of your traditions that you do with your person, and that just creates such a bond. That is it's just so beautiful. I love that you guys have your little date already planned for the holidays.
Yeah. And there's surprises too. So we don't know what the other's
Ah,
planning, which is
I
fun.
love it. I love
Yeah.
it.
So I get this question a lot. And when I say a lot, I mean a lot.
Okay.
How did you know that he was the one?
Oh man. I don't even know how to ask that. I don't even know how to answer that because I it was such a gut feeling. I can tell you that maybe having my broken engagement and having kind of a traumatic experience with an ex and not a great time with somebody that I thought that I really loved and was deeply in love with, and having this stark difference of my body feels calm, my body feels pleasure, maybe for the first time in a long time. My body feels good. I feel safe. I feel emotionally safe. I feel cared for. I feel thought of. All these things of like, because when we do start dating, you do kind of have to be selfish. It's like, what am I looking for? What do I want for my life? This is my life. I get to pick who I'm with. And then once you do join with somebody, it does kind of become us. It's kind of like, what do we need? And it is, it is less me, me, me. But when you do first start dating, you kind of have to think of yourself. Like, does he fit in my life? Yes. Do my parents like him? Yes. Does my family enjoy being around? Does he fit in? Does he seem to care about them? All of those things combined, I think obviously was like the big yes, but the immediate yes and the immediate connection, honestly, it was chemistry, it was attraction, but it was also I feel safe in my body, I feel good in my body. um and that was something I hadn't felt in a long time with a partner. I obviously felt that when I was alone, but with somebody else I was like, wow, I didn't know you could feel this, like I'm
Yeah.
okay, like we're good. And I don't question how he feels about me, I don't question him cheating on me, I don't question any of that. And that was just like eye-opening to have a dating relationship that I didn't feel stressed in, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I think the answer is that it wasn't just one thing. There wasn't one moment or
Yeah,
one thing that he said or did. It
right.
was a combination of how you felt with him and the life you were building together,
Mhm.
and also the contrast of what you felt before versus what you felt now or then.
Yeah.
I also love how you pointed out the part about, like, being selfish in dating because it's so important and so many people don't do it, and when you're not keeping all of that in mind, that's when you end up in relationships that could become toxic or unhealthy.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
it's crazy that, like, we're conditioned to not think about, like, "Oh, well, like, what do I want, or does he fit into my life?" And
Yeah.
instead we think about, like, "Can I mold myself and shapeshift to be
Yeah.
exactly what they want?"
Yeah. And I would say that's even in like in marriage, obviously you do have more of a mindset of like us and like we do need to compromise on things, but it doesn't go away. Like it's not like you should just like give up everything that you are and believe in and like just like submit to whatever your partner wants. Like you definitely need to continue to have those conversations so that you don't lose yourself, so that you still have the things that you want in your life. And whether that's timing, whether that's figuring out when does he play video games and when do I read my book? Like
Yeah,
even simple things like that where it's like I want to do that and he wants to do that. Why don't we do it at the same time so that we both get what we
totally.
need? Like
And
makes a
and
lot of sense.
it's weird because that is something that for some reason is so hard to unlock.
It's like the hardest conversation. It's like contentious and you start getting mad at each other and then you're
Yeah.
like, "Wait, we both just want like a little bit of alone time and we love each other so much and like kiss kiss, I'll see you at nighttime." But like
Yeah.
yeah, like we're
Jake will
fine.
be like, "Can I play Xbox?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go read." Like,
Yeah.
"I'm gonna
Yeah.
go color, I'm gonna go work on my puzzle, I'm gonna watch Gossip Girl." Like, you can totally do that because I
Yes.
want
I
to do
have
this.
things to do. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. And I'm also rewatching Gossip Girl. I saw that you
Oh,
were rewatching it and I was like,
yes.
also not to spoil anything if people are seeing it for the first time, but I seeing it knowing who
I know,
Gossip
it's
Girl
crazy,
is,
it's so
the
crazy.
first
Wait,
episode, I was like, they pointed it out. They
I
showed you.
I didn't know that Kristen Bell was the voice of Gossip Girl.
Is she? I didn't
Yeah.
know that.
You will freak out next time you watch, you're gonna be like, "How did I not know this?" It's impossible to unhear. It's
Oh
crazy.
my
Life
gosh.
changed. I know. I know.
Oh, she's magical in so many ways. She's a Disney princess and just everything
She's
all wrapped in
amazing. Her
one.
I love her and Dax's relationship, like, oh,
Mhm.
so good.
Yeah.
Okay. We hardly scratched the surface
I
of
know.
all of the things that we wanted to talk about. So, you guys, we are gonna do a part 2 where we're gonna get into the therapy, the advice, the communication, all of that good
Perfect.
stuff. I have a bunch of listener questions that we're gonna do. We are going to do a part 2, and I will have the part 2 come out next week or next episode, one of those. So if you're listening to this now, part 2 is coming out next. Yes.
Sounds good.
Okay. But before we end this episode, I have one final question for you. And
Go
I'm gonna
for
have to
it.
think of a follow-up to this question to ask at the end of next episode. So a little homework for me. What is the best piece of dating or relationship advice you have ever received or have to give?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. That is really hard. We got this advice on the night of our rehearsal dinner. And it's so funny. It's not even somebody I'm super close with. It's like a family friend of my husband's, but he said to us, um, give to each other as if you're going to get nothing in return and you'll be fine. So it's kind of like don't expect don't expect the same exact treatment from your partner, and that will set you up for like less resentment, less disappointment, but it also just sets you up for this symbiotic, like it just ends up happening if you're being kind and respectful and gracious in hard conversations. That's going to immediately transfer over to your partner and they're going to want to do that for you. It's less about, well, I was so good and I didn't raise my voice in this conversation and now you're raising your voice and now I'm upset. It's less about that, and it's less about, well, I brought you lunch to work, why don't you ever bring me lunch to work?
Right. It's not
It's
a
more of
competition,
like,
it's love.
no, exactly. And
Yeah.
it does end up all coming out in the wash. You always end up giving each other what you need if you are just treating each other with love and kindness and graciousness and respect and all the good things. Your marriage and your relationship will just exemplify that. And it'll just grow and grow and grow. And I think keeping that resentment low, which I'm sure we'll talk about in part 2, is so, so important. and it is a killer. It is a killer of relationships. So really, really keeping that in check is like great. And I think that advice that we got on our rehearsal dinner night was, it just felt so related to that, where it was just really, really good advice. So,
I love that, and I love that that is when you were given that advice and that's what stuck with you. I think that's really
mhm.
special. It's so funny. I was reading a in the book I was reading last night, I this person gave a toast at a wedding, and I turned to Jake, I'm like, "It's so funny that in books and movies, toasts at weddings are about 20 seconds long,
I know.
but in real life, they're like 20 minutes long."
Yes. Yes.
But I
Mhm.
love them all. Speeches are my favorite. Okay. I'm so, so excited for part 2. Thank you so much
Me
for, again, like,
too.
sharing your story and just really keeping it real with all of us. I think there's so much for everyone to take away from this. I cannot wait to continue the conversation. In the meantime, where can everybody find you?
Everybody can find me on Instagram at Beachy Therapist, and all my goodies are in the link in my bio. So if anybody is interested in therapy in California, or you're interested in a couples retreat, I also do those. I have one coming up in February of 2025, little Valentine getaway. So I'm super excited about that. And I also have some big things coming in 2025. So
Yay.
definitely sign up for my email list if you're interested in any of those things. And yeah,
Amazing. I will have all that linked in the show notes and stay tuned, everybody. I'm excited.
thank you so much.